All right, we are live again. Sorry, everyone. I got it started with the last Q&A, but some people said they were having a hard time hearing me, maybe some connection issues. So give me 1 second. I'm going to go live on Instagram as well, and then we'll see if we can get this going. So wherever you are joining around the world, you can go ahead and start typing your questions into the comments box. And Vishwa, I see that you've joined this next live. Can you just tell me, can you hear me better now? Hopefully I'm not breaking up as much as I was before. Just let me know, yes, everything's okay, or no, it's still a problem. Yeah, I'm actually trying this new webinar software, which worked very well for me last week, but hopefully it's not creating issues. So if you can hear me well, just confirm. Please just say yes, your audio is good. That would be helpful for me. All right, while I wait for someone to confirm, so before I was just going through our different dates for available appointments in Philadelphia, California, Italy, Serbia, Croatia, Russia, India, New Zealand, and Australia are 9 different regions where we see families. So if you're interested in any of those regions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you're interested in our courses, either our Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness course or our Answering Autism course, feel free to reach out and we can give you more information. We've got representatives around the world that speak different languages, and yeah, they'd be happy to help you. So yeah, I see confirmations on Instagram that people can hear me better now, which is great. All right, so who'd like to be the brave first person to go ahead and type in a question, and we'll get started. All right, while I'm waiting for questions, I've got some reading materials here. So these are, all materials from the Doman Method reading program. By the way, these are all materials that come from domanlearning.com. So if you're interested in getting your own materials, you can. But these are, the best kinds of materials that we would use to teach a child to read. And this could be any child, a neurotypical kid, or a child with special needs. And you can see that we use large print, right? Large print is the most important element needed to teach a young child or a child with special needs to read, because young children and kids with neurodevelopmental delays very often have visual challenges with tiny print. They can't see it clearly. So using large, red, clear print makes it easy for the child to be able to see it and read it. And then once we do it with large, clear print, all we need to do is teach the words with repetition to the child, and they can learn how to read it, right? So here you can see these are different words from a set of words of actually vegetables, right? So here, this is how we begin with the Doman reading program. We begin by teaching children how to read words, right? Words are the basic unit of language, right? And the way the human brain reads is actually word by word, not letter by letter, as people often think because of how reading is usually taught in school, but actually the visual word form area of the brain, which is the reading center of the brain, reads words word by word. Now, once we've taught children how to read words, the next logical step is to start to teach them how to read phrases, right? So you can see we've got phrases here like grandma eats bananas, we've got grandpa eats cranberries, mom eats pears. Now, the most important thing when we're teaching a child how to read in sentences is the child needs to have seen all the words already as single words. So for example, if we're going to show a child how to read a sentence, mom eats pears, they need to have seen the single word mom, eats, and pears already as single words, okay? All we're doing with showing sentences as the second step in the Doman Method program is we're showing the child that we can take words that they can read and put them together in longer and longer phrases. Now, next step after sentences are what's called homemade books or Doman books, right? And here you can see an example of a Doman book. Please note that the print size is very nice and large, right? We've basically printed this and slid the sheets into plastic sheets. Every book has a title page. So in this case, it's called Sharks. You can see the print size is still large, right? Sharks come in all sizes. But the most important thing about the Doman books is that the text and the pictures are separated. Text and pictures are separated. This way, the child is not distracted by the pictures from the text, right? We want the child to be able to focus on the text as we're reading it out loud, and then they're allowed to, or they're able to enjoy the pictures on their own, right? So the two most important thing about Doman books is the text is large and we separate text and pictures. So when we follow this process of teaching children how to read words and then moving on to phrases and then moving lastly to Doman books, we find that we have really high success rates in teaching children to read. So the Advanced Doman program, which is our clinical program for children with special needs, we have over 90% success rate in teaching children with special needs how to read. And the reason is because we've made the reading program as user-friendly as possible. We've made the print size large and easy for them to see. So it takes out the possibility of a visual problem stopping them from reading. We also don't require them to read out loud to use their speech, right? This is what's called a passive program, where the child is watching and we, or the parent rather, is teaching using the Doman materials, and all the child has to do is sit there and watch. And so it allows even children who are unable to speak to learn how to read. And then by following a sequential process of going from words to phrases to books, we are able to get the child to read books who may, if they had been taught how to read conventionally, it may have been impossible for them to learn to read. And in fact, many kids with special needs are never even taught to read in school because it's thought of as impossible. A couple of weeks ago, one family that I've been in contact with who came for an appointment in California, they have a 30-year-old daughter with a rare genetic condition. And they reached out to me and with a video of their 30-year-old daughter reading words for the first time in her life because no one had ever taught her. So it's a very special thing. And it's a great way for children to show really how brilliant they are. All right. I have a question here. I was talking about appointments earlier, and Ms. Haresh is saying, what about the United Arab Emirates? So actually, Ms., I have been to the UAE 3 times. I love the UAE, and I've done evaluations there before. And unfortunately, we haven't done any since the start of COVID. And but I would be more than happy to schedule appointments in Dubai again. We just need the number of families there who would request it. All the locations that we go to around the world, sometimes parents will ask, why do you go to these different locations? It's just because of where the families are, right? If we have many families in one specific location, we will send evaluators to that location. So if there are families in UAE who would like us to come, we will absolutely organize that. Thanks for asking. All right, who else has a question? And it doesn't matter if you're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, go ahead and type your question in and we will answer it. Okay, so I see a question here. What is a Doman card? Okay, so I was just going over, this is important because some people get confused. I was just going over the different steps in the reading program, but the Doman method has a bunch of different cognitive programs that it's famous for, right? So reading is one of them. The math program is very famous, but we also have a program for teaching children new information about the world, right? So here you can see, this is what's called the Doman card, as opposed to, sometimes people will think this is a Doman card. This is actually, we call this just a single word in the reading program. But this is a Doman card. Doman cards are a great way to teach children new pieces of information around the world. So the purpose of this program is to bring the kind of world of knowledge that exists and bring it into the child's home where we can teach the child about it, right? Because tiny children children with special needs are not able to explore the world very much. And so Doman cards kind of bring the outside world into the child's home, right? So for example, this is a Doman card of a lion. Okay. Now, there are some important things about these cards that make them uniquely helpful for teaching children. So the first thing is it's very important that we use a specific image, right? A precise image for the child. So you can see that this image is very clear. It's a photograph of a lion. It's not some kind of cartoonish rendering. The second thing is the photo should just have one thing, right? So all you can see on this photo is a lion. You don't see, trees in the background or, other animals that would distract the child. It's just one thing. It makes it very clear to the child, this is what a lion is. The third thing is that we give the child the specific name for that, whatever it is that we're teaching them on the Doman card. So in this example, it's lion, but on another card, it might be Chihuahua. Like we'd say Chihuahua instead of dog, because we want to use the most specific name possible. Or if we're showing flags, we would say this is the flag of India. We wouldn't just say this is a flag. So you use whatever the most specific name is for that specific fact that you're teaching your child. And then last but not least, we want it to be something new for the child, right? Because what's the purpose of showing pictures to a child if they already know what that thing is, right? So why show a picture of a table when you can just point to a table and say, hey, kid, that's a table? So the whole purpose of the Doman cards is to kind of bring this outside world of information into the child's home. Now, these are actually cards created by Doman Learning, right? So these can be found in the Gift of Knowledge course, which has both instruction and materials about Doman cards. And you can also see that there are facts on the back, right, about lions. And we try to give the children facts that would be interesting for them, like lions sleep 20 hours a day. That's pretty interesting. They sleep almost all day long. We provide parents both with the cards and the facts. And the Gift of Knowledge course has, I believe, 450 different cards, and each card has 3 facts on it. So that's just to answer the parents' question about what's the difference between Doman cards and the single words from the reading program. All right. Ms. Haresh is saying, how can I get my son a dietary test? Well, it really depends on what kind of test you're talking about. So children on our advanced program, when they come to our clinic and they're being assessed and we're creating a nutrition program for them, our nutritionist usually will ask for certain basic blood and possibly urine tests for the child. Okay. And this is important to see, does the child have, good levels of many different needs, like do they have enough iron? Does the child have normal red blood cell count? These are the kinds of things our nutritionists are looking at when they're designing the child's nutritional program, because that can help influence dietary recommendations and also supplementation. By the way, if you hear sounds in the background, it's because I'm in our clinic here in Philadelphia, and there are certain children getting evaluated today, so you might hear sounds in the background. So most parents can do those kinds of tests at home with their local doctor. Some children, we will have them do specific testing if we have specific maybe metabolic concerns for the child or physiological concerns. So for some families that come to our clinic, we ask them to get something called an organic acids test, which measures something like 70 or more metabolic pathways in the body. And for certain children, that can be a game changer to do that test. Now, of course, the child needs the test, but they also need someone to read the test who can understand it and then give the right recommendations, right? So every child on our program, their tests are reviewed by Dr. Aravind Bagade, who then provides supplement recommendations for them. Some children get an organic acids test. Other children will get maybe a food intolerance test. That's what's called the dry blood test that can measure if a child's going to have certain intolerant reactions to specific foods. And so with certain children, we will do those tests, but other children, we just do basic, blood and urine tests done with their local physician, and the results are sent to us, and then our medical and clinical team reviews them and then gives the parents guidelines. Okay, I hope that's helpful. So Uni says, I have never seen my child pay attention to any book. So Uni, my follow-up question for you would be, okay, are you reading regular commercial books to your child, or are you reading the Doman books that we mentioned before? Because sometimes, like I said with these books, right, the print size is large, and also there's just a little bit of text on a page. So it allows you to move through the book pretty quickly, right? So I can, if I'm reading this book to the child, right, it would read like this. I'd say, it's called Sharks. Sharks come in all sizes. Oh, look at the picture of the shark. It is as big as 4 giraffes. Oh, look how big that shark is. Sharks are carnivores. This means sharks only eat meat, right? So you can see with one sentence on a page, the book moves very quickly. And sometimes for young children or children with special needs, regular commercial books, the text is too small for them to see, but then also there's a lot of text on a page, and sometimes the child gets bored. And so this quick moving book is often a lot more enjoyable for children. Bai is asking, do you have materials in German language? Bai, I don't believe so, but you can go to domanlearning.com and check out the materials in different languages. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have German, but there are like 10 different languages represented there, and so I might be forgetting. I know for sure we've got English, Spanish, Italian, Russian, Serbian, Croatian, Greek. So there are a bunch. So check out domanlearning.com and look at the different languages and see if German is there. And even if it's not, you could always use the English materials, for example, to teach a second language. Hope that's helpful. Oh, Uni is saying, I missed the first part of her question. Uni, I don't see anything before. I only see what you wrote when you said, I have never seen her pay attention to any book. That's all I saw. So if please resend to me whatever the first part was, because I don't see that. Ms. Haresh is saying, how can I get the Doman book in the United Arab Emirates, in the UAE? So all of our books are available on Amazon. So I know Amazon delivers to most places in the world, but I'm not sure about the UAE specifically. So we have, there are, I think now 10 different Doman books. Our most recent books are The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, Answering Autism, The Doman Cookbook, and From Immobility to Walking. Those are the four most recent books, and all of them are available on Amazon. And as I said, Amazon travels to most places. By the way, for those of you who are interested, we just released the Answering Autism book as an audio book for the first time yesterday, I think. By the way, I am interested. Do any of you listen to audiobooks? I'm interested in, if most of you prefer, real books, like written books, ebooks, or audiobooks. Now the Answering Autism book is in all 3 versions: paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Hopefully the Doman Method book will be out in audiobook soon, but right now it's out just in paperback and ebook. Okay. If any of you prefer audiobooks to like paperback or ebooks, just type it in the comments. It's just helpful for me to know. And if you prefer a paperback or ebook, also type that in, because it's good for me to know. Ms. Are Amazon books available in the UAE? Let me know. Okay, yeah. An's book is saying I prefer on Kindle. Yeah, so the ebooks, I believe all of our books right now are available as ebooks on Amazon, so you could get them there. Yeah, it's interesting. The different ways we all consume books. Hi, Glenda. Thanks so much for joining. It's great to see you too. Okay, so Uni is saying I show my daughter some single words, some sight words from the first grade to high school, some flashcards, and she responded correctly when she was asked. Does she need to start the reading program all over again? Uni, it's a little bit difficult for me to answer this. Now, when you say some sight words from first grade to high school, this might be an English thing, Uni, but high school in the United States is for children aged 14 to 18. So I guess my first question is, how old is your daughter? Okay. And now, regardless of her age, if you've shown her words and she responded correctly when she was asked, which is probably, I'm guessing you were, showing her words like this and testing her and she was able to do it. Uni is saying 23. Okay. So no, if she responded correctly, then what you should do, Uni, is what I described earlier with the reading program, where you should continue with single words, continue teaching your daughter single words. But you should then, once you've shown maybe 200 words, go ahead and add sentences. Okay. And then finally, after single words and sentences, the third step in the reading program, as I discussed, are the Doman books. Okay. So yeah, that would be my recommendation for a 23-year-old. Okay. And it's wonderful that at 23 that you're going back to the reading program. I think it'll be very, very helpful. All right. Bai is saying audiobooks and paperback. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. All right. Who else has a question? I've only got about 15 minutes left. So, wherever you are, go ahead and type your question in and I will get them in order. I'll answer them in order. Okay, Ms. is saying, my son is 3 years old and I'm the only one who's diagnosed him. Yeah, Ms., in our experience, having worked with thousands of families around the world, 80% of the time, the first person to realize that a child has a developmental issue is actually mom. 80% of the time, more than professionals or doctors. So it really shows the power of mother's intuition. And, even if your child doesn't have an official diagnosis, if you are observing developmental delays, I think you're doing the right thing. You're jumping on it as quickly as possible. I was talking to a mom a few weeks ago and she had a 9-year-old. And she started the Doman method with her child, and her child is having great results. But she said to me, she's so happy at the great results the child is having. He started talking and reading, doing all kinds of amazing things at the age of 9. But she said to me, it's sad that I didn't find out about this earlier. And it hurts when we hear parents say that. So, I think if your child is 3 and you're seeing a real issue with your child's development, you don't need to be patient. You can jump on it right now. And I think it's great that you're here. All right. I have a question here from Laura Renko. Laura says, hello, Spencer. I did the math program with my younger children, and I'm now stuck in phase 3. It does not seem like they can recognize the quantity cards. I am not sure how to progress from here. Should I repeat the quantity cards introduction phase, possibly with patterned cards? Laura, how old are your children? The reason why I ask is, in the Math Before School course, which is our math course on domanlearning.com, I actually created 2 different courses, one for children under 2.5 years of age, and another one for over 2.5 children over 2.5 years of age. And the reason why is that I often find is that when children kind of pass that 2 to 3 year old range, they don't seem to have nearly as much success with learning with the quantities, like the quantity cards, and they're also not as interested. So I've really created a new math program for kids 2.5 years and up. So I can see you're saying 20 months and 4.5 years. So yeah, so the 20-month-old is probably good for you to keep going. And when you say that it does not seem like they recognize the cards, have you kind of evaluated both children or just the 4-year-old? The 4-year-old, in the Math Before School course, you can actually go to domanlearning.com, and I think you can take the first class for free if it's something you're interested in. But the Math Before School course, the first step in the program is teaching the child quantities, but instead of using the cards, right, with red dots, we use we use poker chips. Okay, we use real objects that the child can manipulate and hold, because we find that children are much more interested in it. And we only work with quantities up to 10. Okay, because usually for children over 2.5 years of age, doing anything above 10 becomes very difficult. And then once we've mastered that step, we move on to addition, subtraction, and multiplication and division. So likely you're going to have to take two different paths with your children, right? So if you take that first class in the Math Before School course, you'll see that we have what's called A module classes and B module classes. The A module classes are for children under 2.5 years of age, and the B module classes are all for children over 2.5 years of age. Now, the teaching of quantities is still important because we're giving the child something called innate number sense, right? So when I show you a quantity like this, your brain automatically recognizes that as 3. You don't have to count it and go 1, 2, 3. Your brain knows that's 3, or that's 5, or that's 4, or that's 2, and so on. That's called innate number sense. It's the most foundational math ability human has. And we still need to strengthen that even in children over 2.5. Okay. So what we do is we do that first step with poker chips, and then we move on to higher math, because we find when children have a strong number sense, when you can show them a quantity and they don't have to count it, they can just tell you that's 3, 2, 5, and so on, and they instantly recognize it. Then teaching them how to add, for example, becomes easy. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because how can you understand 3 + 2 = 5? How can you understand 3 + 2 if you don't understand this is 3 or this is 2, right? So once you understand quantities, putting them together makes a lot of sense. And so that's kind of the first step in our math program for children over 2.5 years of age. All right. See what other questions we've got here. On's book is saying, when can we start showing the stimulation cards with colors? Well, it depends On's book if we're talking about a child with special needs or a child who's developing, who's neurotypical and developing normally. If a child is neurotypical, generally we will start with cards with colors even at 2.5, 3 months of age, because it's a really good way of stimulating vision for tiny children. And so, yeah, we will start with color images. And if you want to learn more, the book, How Smart Is Your Baby, kind of gives you some guidance on how to begin sensory integration with a baby and young child. If we're talking about a child with special needs, my answer is a bit different. So let me know if that's the case for you. All right. So Ms. Haresh asks, how can I help my child with hyperactivity and anxiety? Yeah, so hyperactivity and anxiety are two of the most common symptoms you'll see with a child with autism diagnosis. And the reason why they have these issues, there are usually three different problems that are lending or contributing to this issue with hyperactivity and anxiety. The first is very often these children have sensory issues. So very often they are too sensitive to sounds or to touch. And that makes the world very chaotic and irritable to them. And so one way they deal with that issue is through hyperactivity, and they become very anxious because they're just dealing with a sensory overload constantly. So sensory issues, number one. And so we do a lot of sensory integration with children like that. The second issue is usually dietary. Very often we find when we remove specific foods from the child's diet, their behavior improves, their hyperactivity reduces. So very often when we reduce sugary foods, processed foods, packaged foods, foods with artificial dyes, and flavorings, things like that, because of the gut-brain connection, there are hundreds of millions of brain cells in our digestive tract. Called neurons, and there are hundreds of millions of them, and they're constantly communicating with our brain. So when we add, in addition to sensory integration, dietary recommendations and supplementation, we can often reduce hyperactivity and anxiety. The third contributing factor is many children with autism and ADD and hyperactivity don't have a vagus nerve that works properly. The vagus nerve, it controls our emotional regulation, and it controls what's called the fight or flight response. And if your vagus nerve doesn't work properly, it will reduce an individual being very anxious and hyperactive and having problems with focus. And so we have two different programs that stimulate the vagus nerve. One is called the Safe and Sound Protocol, which is an auditory therapy that stimulates the vagus nerve. And then we also do, in certain cases, vagus nerve stimulation, which is a very, safe procedure that provides stimulation to the vagus nerve through the ear passage. And so with those children, with children with hyperactivity issues, when we do a combination of diet, sensory integration, and vagus nerve stimulation, we often see a considerable reduction in their hyperactivity. And by the way, in the May Answering Autism course, it's a brand new course that we're releasing in May. We're going to be talking about those different programs. All right. Everyone, I've only got 5 minutes left, so get your questions in. I've got a question here from Oksu, who says, my daughter doesn't prefer a foreign language. How can I introduce it to her? Excuse me for my weak language. It's okay, Oksu. I get the idea. So, Oksu, I can't know exactly what your situation is like, but it's very common for children, if they grow up in homes where multiple languages are spoken, it's very common that they will show a preference for a language. Very often it's the language that is the general language spoken in their community, which is kind of surprising. Sometimes parents who are immigrants will speak to their child in one language at home, but the child hears another language maybe at school or outside, and very often a child will show a preference for that language. It's kind of like the child realizes, okay, in this environment, I need this language to communicate with everyone. And what I say to parents is, it's perfectly fine if you have a child who chooses to only speak in one language. That's fine. That's their choice. Like, don't feel bad about that. The most important thing you can do as a parent is to introduce your child to the other languages by speaking in them. So if you also speak multiple languages, even if you don't speak the other language perfectly, make sure to speak it to your child, because even if your child hears it a bit at home, your child will take in that information. Children are linguistic geniuses. And even if she decides not to speak it, she will hear it. And as she gets older and older, at a certain point, when she sees why it's good for her to speak in the other language, she will. So the most important thing is just try to include as many languages as possible in your child's environment, and your child will listen to it and take in the information. All right, Uni is saying, I've started the program of crawling and creeping with my daughter, and she likes it, and her mood has improved, even though I can't do the program completely. That's fine, Uni. I mean, I think it's great that her mood has improved with what you've been able to start. Uni is saying, can I start brachiation? Yeah, so brachiation, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a program that we do for many children to improve manual development. We do it both with children with special needs and neurotypical kids. And so Uni, the answer is absolutely yes, you can. Yeah, you can start brachiation. I think as long as crawling and creeping is done consistently, then maybe adding another part to the physical program, a second part of the physical program, is a good idea. All right. Laura's asking, is it advisable to add phonetic learning to the reading program? So, Laura, usually for a child, maybe 3 years and up, 3 to 6 years of age on our program, reading program, it's perfectly fine to add phonetics in addition to the Doman reading program. Sometimes parents are worried it'll use the child. It won't. Children are actually, a lot of research has shown that children that learn both sight words and letters and phonetic learning do well when they get both. They do much better than children who only get phonetic reading teaching. They do much better when they get combined than just the phonetic learning. So it's absolutely fine. Children aren't confused by it. As long as you do the Doman reading program consistently, your child will learn how to read whole words and will learn how to read more quickly. You see, children that only learn how to read phonetically, the issue is that they have to use their speech to kind of sound out words. The other problem is that many languages are not perfectly phonetic. And then the problem is if they read letter by letter and they become slow readers, then when children read slowly, they tend to read with low comprehension, because the slower you read, it takes longer for you to get through a sentence. And if you take a long time to read a sentence like this, right, which is how a slow reader might read, by the time they get to the end of the sentence, they can't even remember what was the start of the sentence. So that's the real problem, slow reading. So, and in addition to that, children don't like it when they read slowly. It's not fun to read slowly. So, so anyway, it's perfectly fine to do phonetics in addition to the reading program. In fact, when I release, I'm going to be releasing a book in the next couple of years with kind of new ideas for the reading part of the program. There's letter instruction in the there's going to be instruction about letters in that book, because there does come a certain time, again, with children between the ages of 3 and 6, where actually letter teaching can be helpful in addition to their single words program. Hope that's helpful. All right, everyone. It looks like we are all out of time. Thanks to everyone for joining me today. If you're interested, as I said, in any of our, coming for an appointment to Doman International in any of our worldwide locations, don't hesitate to send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, or through our website, domaninternational.org. And if you're interested in our Doman Method course, From Special Needs to Wellness, or our Answering Autism course coming up, feel free to reach out to us, and one of our representatives around the world will contact you. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, by the way, I will be back here next week at the same time, so feel free to join me then. All right, bye-bye.